You're listening to the Really Useful Podcast. This is the tech podcast for technophobes from makeuseof.com. Welcome to the show. Thank you for downloading us. This is the Really Useful Podcast. My name is Christian Corley. His name is Gavin Phillips. How are you doing, Gavin?
Doing very well, Christian. Yeah, very well. Had a really good weekend. Took the kids bowling for the first time ever. I've never been to a 10-pin bowling alley, so that was really good fun.
Wow. I mean, it's not something we haven't done, but we haven't done it since many years ago, before the lockdowns and all that sort of thing. We actually got a voucher. Something happened. I can't remember what happened. I think maybe there was a power cut or a ball exploded or something. I don't know exactly what it was that happened, but they gave us a voucher so we could go back another time for free, and that expired in 2020. So
yeah, classic.
Yeah, it's almost like they knew. Anyhow, so we're here with your weekly dose of tech news that matters and some tips and tricks to help you make better use of your tech. And once we've done that, we've got a couple of Well, I've got a recommendation. Hopefully Gavin also has a recommendation. We will kick off with a cryptocurrency scam. Now, if you have been in tune with events financially over the past few years, you'll know that cryptocurrency has had a bit of a boom time, and then it's kind of like slipped down a little, shall we say. There's various scams doing the rounds that are aiming at people with not enough knowledge about cryptocurrency. I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Gavin?
Yeah, definitely. These ones target people who might be new to cryptocurrency. But you know what? Equally, people who would probably consider themselves fairly au fait with crypto in general definitely fall to these sorts of scams as well. And so what's happened here is on Reddit, there was a scam set up, created. So they've created a fake subreddit, which is like a forum on the actual website itself. And if you clicked a link that was posted on this forum, it would connect to your cryptocurrency wallet, and it would effectively transfer all of the cryptocurrency. In this case, they were targeting something called Shiba Inu. And they would steal all of your funds. And once your crypto is gone, there is no way of getting it back. So, yeah, pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, pretty much the case is, you see claims of crypto airdrops, you keep scrolling, basically, don't you? Because they cannot be trusted.
No, for sure. I mean, some of them are legitimate. Like some big cryptocurrencies have launched through airdrops, but most of the time it's used as a marketing tactic.
It's a tainted thing, isn't it? Really, I can't see anyone legitimate going down that path in future because of scams.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's becoming less and less used, and it'd be like, there's thousands of cryptocurrencies launched each year, and many of them only exist for a handful of months, and it's a good way for the people running them to get it out to a load of people, bump the price up nice and fast, and then they can sell their holdings, once the price gets to whatever point they deem acceptable. So yeah, you likely see them as part of like pump and dump schemes or rug pull schemes.
Yeah. So we'll move on. Elon Musk has teamed up with Body Shop to release a Ranger. For now, he hasn't.
One day he will, though. That'll be our day.
Yeah. He has confirmed more delays for Cybertruck. Everyone apparently wants a Cybertruck. I don't, but I don't know why you said that, Gavin. I really don't. But when will we see them on the road?
Well, according to Mr. Musk, he was speaking at Tesla's end-of-year financial report and telling everybody how amazing Tesla have done over the last year. They've made loads of money, as you would expect. But he dropped the bombshell that the Cybertruck, which is what a lot of Tesla fans want, it was meant to be launching sort of midway through this year, 2023. And he said Basically, we don't know when production is really going to start. And his words exactly is, I don't know, maybe sometime this summer, which, is very sort of Elon Musk way of saying, it could be absolutely any time. The smart money says probably some cars, Cybertrucks released towards the end of 2023, but we're definitely looking more at 2024 now.
What, I have to ask, is a Cybertruck exactly?
So it's Tesla's take on, a modern truck. It does look extremely futuristic. In my mind, it also looks really, really silly. It's it's an odd-looking machine, and I'd encourage the listener to go and have a little look at the article referring to this, because it's got a nice picture of the Cybertruck at the top of it. I don't quite know how you would describe it, Christian. Maybe you could do a better job.
It looks like a vehicle from Transformers the movie, 1986 animated version.
Brilliant, yeah. It's meant to be, it's an electric truck. It's got various features that people who are into electric vehicles want. It's meant to be bulletproof and stuff like that as well, I believe.
Right, it's just in case.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a strange looking machine, but apparently this is the future we're going to live in. It's like a triangle on wheels, basically.
Yeah, it's a pyramid on wheels. Yeah. Okay, so that's the Elon Musk latest. 37 million customers have had their data exposed in it says huge here. I would say massive. Massive's
Yes.
bigger than huge, isn't it? T-Mobile breach, 37 million.
That is a lot, isn't it?
I mean, that's got to be
37
all
million
of T-Mobile's customers, surely.
Oh, who knows? Well, maybe in the US.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. It's bonkers, and what makes it worse is it's not their first issue, is it? It's not their first massive data breach.
I mean, in 2021, a data breach exposed the data of 40 million former and prospective customers. Some have probably left following that.
I don't know about you, Christian, but you almost become a bit numb to this sort of news, don't you? Because
we shouldn't.
We shouldn't, and that's the problem with it. But you read the headline and you're like, I'm not a T-Mobile customer, but everybody who is going to have to go through the rigmarole of, changing passwords, checking credit cards, all that stuff that comes with it because a company isn't doing what they should do with people's private data.
Yeah, it's a good case in favour of pay-as-you-go, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, for sure. Just a pay-as-you-go SIM card, no contract, no relationship proper with the company. It makes more sense in a way, doesn't it?
It does indeed. I mean, there's very little that anyone affected by this can do other than the whole usual shebang of changing passwords and maybe finding a different provider. But, there's every chance it could happen to a different mobile network.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You could change, but...
You can change, but you can't hide. That almost brings us to the next topic. in a roundabout sort of way. Meta is bringing back Trump's Facebook and Instagram accounts. I personally find Donald Trump to be hilarious.
Really?
So, not in a sort of he knows he's hilarious sort of way. In a kind of, he's... US politics to me is a massive clown show. So, apologies, American listeners. But it is a bit of a circus to anyone else watching. I mean, after all, you made a TV show about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was always inevitable to me that he would eventually come back onto all of these platforms. Obviously he's now back on Twitter, although he's obviously not using it. He's sticking to Truth Social, which I believe he has some sort of deal with, that he will only post there to keep their numbers up or whatever. So he's making money from that. It would be interesting to see if he takes a similar tact with Facebook and Instagram, if this deal with Truth Social will stop him from posting on these networks as well. And I know he had a presence on Facebook and Instagram, but it was nothing like his relationship with Twitter, which during his presidential campaigns was obviously, and during his presidency as well, was one of his main ways of communicating and what have you with his supporters. So it'd be interesting to see what happens from here in, I think.
He has been reinstated on Twitter as well, hasn't he? But I don't think anything has transpired there.
No, absolutely. That's what, so he's. I think he's exclusively on the True Social
True
thing.
Social, yeah.
That he owns it, doesn't he? Or
as far as I'm aware, yeah. Or he certainly has a holding.
Yeah. So either way, he's keeping it to his own network, which makes sense because he wants to get the eyes on his own network and the advertising that comes with that. So.
Yeah. So that's happening. So I mean. On one hand, it might be that you don't hear anything from the former president of the United States on Facebook or on Instagram. On the other hand, you might. We suspect it's probably the latter, and that, as Gavin says, Truth Social is where he will be hanging, for want of a better term. So that brings us to our tips, tricks, roundup of things that you can do with your tech. And, before we started recording this, I had to restart my computer. And I don't do that very often. Something I would do even less is restart my phone. It's something that I've never really had to do for a long time. Back in the old days of smartphones and things, we'd restart our phones quite regularly when they started getting slow and stuff. But the phone I have now, the Oppo, I can't remember the last time I had to restart it, and I certainly haven't had to restart it for it running slow. I think it was probably trying to get rid of an app the last time I restarted it. Now, the reason we don't do that very often is because the resources available to phones have increased over the years. There was a time when mobile phones had very little RAM, which begs the question, how much does a smartphone need in terms of RAM? I think I'm right in saying this phone has 12 gigabytes, which seems to me to be too much.
12 is definitely in the upper sphere of where smartphone RAM is at these days. There are devices out there with 16 gig of RAM.
Yeah.
But these are predominantly smartphones that are, marketed for like gaming and stuff like that.
Sure.
So there is like a specific tier of, smartphone gaming. Some people really love gaming on their smartphones, and for some people it's the only gaming they can get hold of. So it makes sense to put a bit more money into it or whatever, and get a premium experience.
On that point, quick sidestep. What do you think of gaming on the mobile?
You know what? I do game on my mobile, but I do a lot of retro gaming. So
Right.
I play like SNES and Game Boy games and PlayStation 1 games and what have you. So
Right.
I was recently on a long haul flight and I played through most of the original Grand Theft Auto, which was great fun, and like such a fun thing to do on a smartphone because the screen size and the quality of your screen is really good, and because the old games can be like sampled up a bit, it works really well. So
Wow.
yeah, it's worth looking at.
Okay. So carry on. Smartphone RAM, how much do we need?
Yeah, so smartphone RAM, most phones these days need between 6 gigabytes and 8 gigabytes of RAM. And most phones that you buy these days will just come with that regardless. So even in 2014, Apple was shipping phones with, I think, 4 gigabytes of RAM, which was loads at the time, but they've only increased that amount to 6 gigabytes of RAM, and that's even with the iPhone 14, which was released in 2022. And so with an Apple device, the iOS is programmed so well, in my opinion, that they don't need heaps of RAM and extra memory to do loads of stuff. You might not do a lot of gaming on an Apple phone, but for everything else, it's going to run really well, and that's because Apple have programmed their operating system so well. But you'll find a similar situation with most Android smartphones these days as well. So like your flagship Samsung smartphones, for instance, are probably going to come with about 8 gigabytes of RAM. I think the latest Google Pixels come with either 6 gig or 8 gigabytes. I've got a OnePlus Nord here, which I use as my daily driver. It's got 8 GB. So anything more than that, for the vast majority of people, it's just really not required.
I've double checked. This definitely has 12 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah, yeah. Is that the Oppo 8?
Yeah, it actually says 12 gigabytes plus 4 gigabytes. So does that mean it's using 4 gigabytes of the storage as RAM?
Oh, interesting. Or maybe does it have 4 GB of video RAM? That doesn't seem likely or possible. I don't know, to be honest. I'd have to look at the specs to see.
That's interesting though. So yeah, I was playing with my. I mean, we're talking about resources, and I think you're absolutely right. I think it's in terms of the Apple phones, they do tend to make better use of the RAM, and they're more optimized, aren't they, for that? And I think that probably comes with them all being developed and released by the same company rather than there being lots of different manufacturers using the same operating system, which is the case with Android. It puts me in mind of the old days of computing back in the 16-bit days, when you would have something like the Commodore Amiga or a game console, and the like the SNES or the Mega Drive / Genesis, and the developers of the games would really fit as much into those games as they could, knowing that they had a very, very specific system requirements. Conversely, developers of PC IBM compatibles, they knew that their devices that they were developing for were expandable, so they could produce a game of a particular standard, and then they could also produce that game to require more requirements. And there's less of a focus on the requirements of a static system, and more of a just make something that can then be maybe has a better version. But at the same time, I think that brings a different philosophy into the whole development, doesn't it? Because you're not developing for static hardware, you're developing for hardware that can be expanded, and then there's going to be creep, isn't there, basically?
Oh yeah, definitely. And you see things like so something like Google Chrome, I think, is always a good example, directly relating to what you were talking about. So developers working within an extremely confined system, and then you have something modern now like the Google Chrome browser, which is just like monstrous in the way that it uses RAM. And if you bought something now that had, if you bought a laptop with 8 GB of RAM and used Google Chrome, you might still end up like almost running out of RAM at times, which seems absurd. I was just looking up then as well, as you were talking about the old systems, and the original PlayStation shipped with 2 megabytes of RAM.
Wow.
Like 2 megabytes, which is just bonkers, isn't it?
I remember
but it shows what they could do.
I remember sitting playing the Aliens game on the PlayStation for hours.
They're fantastic games, absolutely fantastic.
And
I love old PlayStation 1 games.
Yeah, that was a good game, and 2 megabytes though, amazing that you did that with 2 megabytes. Wow. So that's mobile phone RAM. How much do you need? I mean, this also brings us to that sort of angle of buying a mobile phone. How much RAM do you need? I suppose it depends what you want out of your phone, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you just want a phone that's going to do, texting, calling, basic web browsing, WhatsApp or whatever, like you just go for a mid-tier phone. You don't even need 6 GB. You'll get away with 4. And you could probably save yourself a heap of money in the process, you know. So the old the iPhone 8, that's still running the latest version of iOS 16, and it has 2 GB of RAM, and it will work absolutely fine.
Wow, that's some going.
Yeah, it's really impressive. That's what's saying about iOS. Like, I've been an Android user for donkeys at this point, but I've always thought iOS is a really, really good operating system.
Okay, we'll move on now to another mobile phone topic, actually, parental control software. Recently, I've taken a look at the best parental control apps that are available on Android phones. And I'm going to go through the list of them, and I'm going to tell you the ones that I prefer. So you've got Kids Place, you've got Secure Teen Parental Control, you've got Screen Time, you've got Kids Zone Parental Control, you have Custodio, you have Google Family Link, You have Amazon Parent Dashboard, and you have Family Safe. Now, a lot of these are very good. They all have subscriptions available, but the key things is that they all use the built-in parental control software of the Android operating system anyway. So in many ways, although they add bells and whistles in the consoles of the websites, of the administration app that the parents have, basically they kind of piggyback on the operating system. So that aside, they're all good choices. My personal preferences are Google Family Link and Amazon Parent Dashboard because those are the ones that I've used and I know how good they are. Before I go into those, do you use any?
I was using Google Family Link, and I used it exclusively because I only have only my eldest child has a personal smartphone. The other ones just have use of family devices, so I don't feel the need to, track them quite as much.
Right.
But we switched her to an iPhone just because I had one lying around and the battery on her old Android was completely dead. And so now I need to install something else on her iPhone so that I can continue, monitoring and stuff. And I haven't quite done that yet. So this list is very interesting.
Well, happy to help. The key thing to note here really is that with the Amazon option, it only works on Amazon tablets. It doesn't. No, rephrase that. The Amazon option I've only used on Amazon tablets, but you can install it on other devices as well. But it's part of the Amazon Kids Plus, which comes with a $4.99 subscription for Prime members and $7.99 subscription for non-Prime members. Amazon Parent Dashboard is quite good, but it has advantages. So you can set daily time limits. You can modify web browser access. You can specify time limits for different types of app as well. So you can also set them as priority. So you could insist that the child does some reading before they're then able to watch video or listen to music or whatever. So that's kind of useful with the Amazon Parent Dashboard. But also, at the same time, it's not quite as granular with specific apps as Google's Family Link is. You can specifically block or put limits on whichever app that you want with Google Family Link, along with restricting access to particular times, restricting types of access, blocking internet access, and things like that. I prefer Google Family Link because of the app-specific things that you can do. The only comparative feature on Amazon Parent Dashboard is that you can limit types of app. So, for instance, if my eldest daughter has an Amazon tablet, and I can restrict video, but only on Amazon Prime. If I want to restrict video on Disney Plus, then I have to block her from using all apps, or rather all third-party apps, you see. So it's not as granular as it is with Google Family Link. But as I say, it has better control options for, you can kind of reward specific apps and things by the child reading or listening to an audiobook or whatever.
Oh, that's an interesting feature in itself, though. Like, you can give them a little boost or bump or whatever.
Yeah, they both have the option of bonus time as well. So, but So basically, I've got my eldest son is using an Android tablet, so we use Google Family Link for him. His twin sister's using the Amazon Parent Dashboard because we're using the Amazon Parent Dashboard for her because she has an Amazon tablet, and our youngest also has an Amazon tablet, so quite a bit of experience with both of them. I like them both. I've got no complaints over either. Seriously, they're both as good as each other. They just have one does one thing better and the other does another thing better, basically. And I think that's the case with all of these.
Sometimes you do just have to try a couple, don't you, just to figure out which works best, just for your specific situation, because every child and every parent has different expectations about what they'll be doing with the tablet, and the child's going to use it in a different way. So, check a few out, I think.
So that brings us to our recommendations, the part of the show in which myself and whoever I'm hosting with, in this occasion it's Gavin Phillips, give you a recommendation. It's a sample of something that we've experienced electronically over the past week, and then, give you a link to it, give you a little explanation as to why we're suggesting it. Who's going first, Gavin?
I can go first if you want. Yeah,
Okay, go on then.
I don't mind. So this week, I've mainly been playing Factorio. My goodness, it's addictive.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah, so it's the factory building game. You've crash landed on a planet, and you have to build up your factory to get back off the planet to launch a rocket. Also inhabiting the planet are aliens, basically, who do not like the pollution that you create with your massive factory. And so you go around the planet, and you mine various resources: iron, copper, rock, uranium, and so on. And you can build really quite incredibly large factories, and really quite complex systems within these factories, using all sorts of different gadgets and whatnot. But there's circuitry built into it, so you can build programmable areas, and there are I can't remember the name of the feature, but you can basically customize it to such a degree that people have built computers inside Factorio and use them to display other things. So one of the most famous instances was someone built a huge screen within Factorio and used it to show Darude's Sandstorm. And you can do all sorts of bonkers stuff with it. Similar to how people have used the redstone in Minecraft to build fantastical machines that you think you probably shouldn't be able to build within a video game, but you absolutely can. It has just undergone a price increase for the first time in its entire history,
Right.
which is odd because normally after a while games tend to decrease in price, and it's gone from $30 to $35, which is, it's basically unheard of for games to increase in price some 6 years after its release or so. 6 years? Oh, no, not even 6 years. Well, the full version was released 3 years ago, but it had been in development for a long time before that as well.
Okay.
But for the amount of hours you were guaranteed to get out of this game, I still think even $35 is a very, very good price for it. It's you will easily spend hundreds upon hundreds of hours playing this game. So
Wow.
but get in there.
Okay. Sounds like the sort of game that I would like. So, one of the reviews here, Factorio is like crack but better.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yes. I mean, not having ever tried crack, I couldn't really compare it, but
There's another one, basically crack but legal and cheap. I'm concerned about some of these Steam users, to be honest.
well, you see there's the Factorio subreddits, and other forums, and people say, "Oh, I've got to 1,000 hours," which is a lot to play one game, and people go, "Oh, good, you're just getting started then."
There's one I don't know. I'm pretty sure that when you see a review on Steam that says how many hours the person has played, it's about that game. There's a person here called Hondura TM has played 3,266.5 hours on Factorio.
That figures, because you can start off very small and your first base will be a mishmash, squiggly lines called spaghetti. That's what people refer it to. You're just trying to fit everything everywhere. And as you get better at the game, you'll build more advanced factories with better planning. And once you've done it once, you kind of go, I could have done that bit better. So you just start again. And also, it has a prolific modding scene. So once you've completed the main game, and the goal of the main game is to launch the rocket, there are total overhaul mods as well. So you can get ones that add additional planets that you need to fly to, or ones that add loads of new resources and loads of new factory types and all sorts of stuff. So it can just go on and on and on. It's quite an incredible game.
I don't even think I've been on Steam for that many hours. That's insane.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, isn't it?
It is. Okay. Now I don't want to give another video game specifically as a recommendation because it gets a bit one note if we do that. However, there has been, as many people listening may know, the re-release of GoldenEye 007 on Nintendo Switch and on Xbox over the past few days. So if you have the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack, or if you have Xbox Game Pass, you can play GoldenEye 007, which was initially... the Xbox version was supposed to come out in 2008, and then it was supposed to come out on a collection called Rare Replay in 2015, but neither of those, it didn't actually transpire to appear at either time. And the Nintendo version is the Nintendo 64 version, which released back, I mean, they're both the Nintendo 64 version, essentially, which released back in 1997. Now, you know, you can go ahead and pick those up, but what I'm more interested in sharing is the kind of the making of documentary that was produced for that Rare Replay compilation in 2015. It's a documentary about the making of the GoldenEye 007 game. It's a really good documentary. It gives you a good insight as to how games like that were built back in the 1990s. It was originally intended to be an on-rails game, Gavin, like Time Crisis.
Wow, I didn't know that.
No,
really?
I didn't either, yeah. So there's a lot of information, interesting information in that documentary that's worth checking out. So I'll include a link to that in the show notes. And funnily enough, I'm just off to play GoldenEye now. Yeah, it's a bit of a blast from the past returning to that. I actually played it a couple of years ago with the leaked version. I had a look at that, and it had a kind of this was the Xbox version. So you could play the leaked version in an Xbox One or Xbox 360 emulator called Xenia, and that version had a sort of an updated graphics overlay that you could instantly switch between the original Nintendo 64 graphics and sort of Xbox 360 appropriate graphics. But that option isn't in the Xbox version that you can play now.
So it's just old graphics all the way?
It's old graphics, but polished up. It's like upscaled, and a widescreen mode. But those new graphics aren't available, which is a bizarre omission because they were one of the most interesting things about the 2008 unreleased version. But there you go. Everything we've discussed in the Really Useful podcast, you'll find in the show notes. If we've helped you in any way, or we've said something that you think will help a friend, share them, get them involved in listening to our podcast, and we'll be back for another edition next time. Until then, it's goodbye from us.